Russian President Vladimir Putin is all set to visit India today for the traditional annual summit between leaders of both countries, as India gears up for the much-anticipated Modi-Putin talks in the evening. Reports suggest up to 10 bilateral agreements will be signed during President Putin's visit to boost the India-Russia strategic partnership. This will be Putin's second visit outside Russia this year. The first was in June to meet US President Joe Biden in Geneva. Putin has skipped visits to the G20 summit, the Glasgow Climate Conference, and rescheduled a visit to China because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. His trip to India highlights the significance Putin places on bilateral ties with traditional ally India. With this visit, Putin is indicating that this tour is not just about maintaining the special strategic partnership with India, but also about strengthening the bilateral relationship. This comes despite New Delhi's growing closeness to Washington. According to reports, Russia and India will sign 10 bilateral agreements in various areas, including some semi-confidential ones following the talks. The meeting between Putin and Indian Prime Minister is also likely to see the presentation of the S-400 air defense system to India. According to reports, both the countries are also likely to sign a deal on supplying AK-203 assault rifles to India. Despite the changing geopolitical equations, Delhi and Moscow remain closest of allies. But some areas of difference will be difficult to ignore, given the fact that both Russia and India are cozying up to different partners involved in the geopolitical rivalry between US and China. The clash of ideas regarding the Indo-Pacific and the re-emergence of the Quad group comprising Australia, Japan, US and India could create an impact on the upcoming summit.
I guess you need more practice.
Well, our correspondent Julia Chapman and Dr. Sriram Cholia, a Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs, join us live to discuss more about this summit. Thank you both for joining us. Julia, I will start with you. Russian ministers say Moscow has made plans for the future. Russia will respect cultural diversity and that both countries will help each other in developments. What message is Russia sending to the US and China in regards to this summit?
Well, Russia is certainly sending the message that India maintains a position for Russia as a very important partner in the spheres of defense and fighting terrorism and in bilateral relations, although the two countries are trying very hard to boost the trade turnover between them, which was met with some struggles due to the pandemic, but they are trying to get that relationship back on track. But certainly when it comes to international relations, it is sending a very strong signal to Washington, where of course ties between Russia and the US are very difficult, basically positioning Russia as a partner for many countries on the world stage, not least those that have quite good relations with Washington. So that certainly sends a strong message, not least a day ahead of talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and US President Joe Biden. Those are taking place tomorrow in a virtual format. So certainly this timing is very significant, and the fact that President Putin is traveling in person to New Delhi for the very first time in many years, and he hasn't made very many trips since the start of the pandemic, full stop, just that one that you mentioned, to Geneva to meet his US counterpart earlier this year. As far as China is concerned, it's more of a balancing act for Russia, which of course maintains very good ties with Beijing, but certainly the position of Russia is that it can maintain many different relationships, even with countries who have very difficult ones between them.
Right. Dr. Cholia, coming back to you, what benefits in the future will India and Asia Pacific gain from, enhancing this collaboration and relationship with Russia?
Well, Eric, firstly, for India, Russia matters at multiple levels. Obviously, it's a very, very trusted defense partner, and the scale of the defense relationship is just risen to another level in the last couple of years. totaling almost $10 billion of defense trade in 2020. So whenever India has faced serious national security challenges, be it from Pakistan or be it from China, Russia has equipped us with necessary hardware and without hesitation. So irrespective of Russia's relationships with China and Pakistan, it does not disappoint us. And I think that's the key reason why we are laying out the red carpet for them today. I mean, the S-400 is, of course, the pinnacle of this defense relationship, but there's also co-development, co-partnership, and co-production and the joint export, for example, of the BrahMos missile that is on the cards. There's a bunch of frigates for the Navy, Indian Navy, that Russia is helping to build. Now there is talk about Akula class submarine also coming in. So as when you mentioned the Indo-Pacific, it's interesting that Russia helps India not only to do military counterbalancing of its main adversaries, but also on the land side, but also in the oceanic side. So although Russia is a little bit wary of joining hands in the Indo-Pacific idea because it thinks that it is directly challenging Chinese sphere of influence, nonetheless, Russia is ready to provide India with all the naval hardware that we need to be able to push back the Chinese expansionism in the Indo-Pacific. So Russia may not buy the idea of Indo-Pacific or Quad, but that's okay for us because as long as they are equipping us, it's helping us with our core capabilities. And in that sense, Russia is a geostrategic partner for us because it's not just civilian trade. I mean, civilian trade, like you said, has not gone beyond $10 billion. It's been stagnating. But on the strategic side of cooperation, Russia has gone far.
Sorry to cut you short. We will continue with this conversation shortly. So, Dr. Cholia and Julia, stick with me because I'll come back to you in a short while. Alongside the India-Russia summit, foreign and defense secretaries of the two countries held the inaugural 2+2 dialogue today. Speaking at the meeting, Indian Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said that ties between both India and Russia have progressed in a steady manner and will continue to remain so in challenging times. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said that he hoped the two countries would together enhance regional security. India and Russia also inked agreements for procuring AK-203 assault rifles through the Indo-Russian Rifles Limited and signed an agreement on military and technical cooperation from 2021 to 2031. Meanwhile, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said that they will discuss consequences of over-centralized globalization and terrorism, among other things. Before commencing the 2+2 dialogue, the Russian and defense ministers of both countries had a one-on-one bilateral meeting where they stressed the importance of the strategic partnership between the two countries. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and his Russian counterpart Sergei Shoigu also co-chaired a session of the Intergovernment Commission on Military Technical Cooperation. The inter-ministerial meeting will be followed by the annual summit between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi later today. Well, our correspondent Julia Chapman and Dr. Cholia are still with us. Julia, coming back to you, the relos or exchange of logistics agreement is among the discussions. Why is there an urge to strengthen or empower defense and militaries in both countries?
Well, certainly defense is a very big priority for the Russian government, and I think the fact that Sergei Shoigu, the Russian defense minister, is traveling as well with President Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov really underscores the importance of defense in the developing Russian-Indian relationship. And it's certainly an area where Russia maintains quite a big advantage in the world, and that's partly because it spends so much money on defense technology and indeed in exporting its products. The S-400 missile system, of course, being one of the most controversial. It's met with lots of issues with many of its deliveries in terms of people in Turkey having received the S-400 and then being slapped with sanctions from the US. over that delivery. Of course, Turkey is a NATO ally, so the situation is slightly different. China, of course, has the S-400 missile system as well. But the delivery of this system to India will certainly be a very big step in the defence relationship between the two countries, which remains a very large part of the bilateral relationship between India and Russia. And it also reflects, I think, the growing risks in the world. That's certainly something we hear time and again from Russian officials, who say that this is a time of very high tensions and maintaining defence relationships with a number of countries is really hedging Russia's position, making sure that it has lots of friends in many different spheres of the world.
All right. Finally, Dr. Cholia, some critics view Putin's invitation as a balancing act by India between Russia and the US, since, Moscow has expressed reservations over the Quad. Dr. Cholia, what do you make of such comments that this dialogue was an afterthought?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is, as I said, pertaining to India's core national security interests. So it cannot be an afterthought. And I think there is at a deeper level realization in India that banking on the US alone will not help us manage our security challenges in our own extended neighborhood. For example, when the US packed its bags and left Afghanistan for the Taliban to take over, there was huge disappointment here. So who do we fall back on? Dr. Jaishankar was mentioning one of the main topics for the 2+2 dialogue between India and Russia is on how to stabilize the region around Afghanistan, especially involving Central Asian states over whom Russia has a significant hold or influence, and with whom India needs to cooperate in order to keep a lid and a watch on the Taliban and other radical actors like ISIS, who could emanate out of the chaos of the regime fall in Kabul. So I think Russia will matter in order to manage all these severe crises that we are facing, extended crises in our backyard. And as far as the US goes, I don't think it's balancing between the two, because these are two independent. Because if you look at the geography, with the US, the partnership is more in the Indo-Pacific, in the maritime domain, and where there is multilateral initiatives with Australia, Japan, and with ASEAN countries. But one thing I must mention, Dr. Jaishankar said that both Russia and India should believe in ASEAN centrality. What he means there is that, we have to strengthen the regional grouping in Southeast Asia. We should not allow it to fall prey to Chinese divide and rule policy and other means of browbeating these small countries. Russia is far away from Indo-Pacific. It doesn't have a presence there. But I think Russia will understand that eventually, if it wants to re-emerge as a great power, it needs to come in the Indian Ocean. It needs to come in the Indo-Pacific. We have started a thing with Russia now in the Eastern Maritime Corridor from Chennai to Vladivostok. It is for commercial shipping, but eventually we hope Russia, with the submarine Akula class submarine deal and such things, that naval cooperation will also enhance, and softly it may ultimately help us achieve our goal of counterbalancing China. So either with the US or with Russia, our goal is counterbalancing China in one form or the other, hard or soft.
Dr. Sriram Cholia and Julia Chapman, thank you both for your insights. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.